Yo, what is up, everybody? Jumping here, and today I am back on some Borderlands 3, and I want to talk about the best builds for Mayhem 4. Now, I'm going to be showing off a Zane build today, but just know that you can do this on pretty much every character. You can come up with builds to go along with this type of setup, and it will absolutely destroy Mayhem 4 pretty much no matter what. It's absolutely crazy. But here's the deal. When it comes to this, we are going to be doing a glitch or an exploit, whatever you want to call it, and eventually this will be patched out. Now, I definitely say that this is your best setup. There are other setups that work good on Mayhem 4. My only problem so far with Mayhem 4 is that I feel like they have actually done something I didn't want them to do, which is they've changed the game now in a way where a lot of things are not going to be very good anymore. Because it used to be that, yes, there was always better setups, better weapons that you could use for Mayhem 3. But at the end of the day, you could kind of get away with using a lot of different stuff. Now, it's like you're going to be more limited to things that are good. Because if you're playing on Mayhem 4, the enemies have 1,000% more shields, 1,000% more armor, 850% more health. Now, you don't have to worry about a lot of negative debuffs. That's pretty much the best part about it. But at the same time, you're not going to get crazy buffs either in Mayhem 4. You really don't. So when you combine all that together, a lot of weapons are going to underperform. A lot of setups are going to underperform on Mayhem 4 in comparison to like Mayhem 3. So I kind of feel like they might need to do something about that to address it, because balancing has always been a problem in Borderlands. They've always had this issue, and eventually it's going to get to the point where there's only going to be so many guns in the game that are viable for the higher difficulty. So I don't really want to see that happen. But I do want to show this setup because, like I said, this works on every character. I want to show off Zane for now just because Zane was my main initially, and I haven't done a Zane video in a long time. So I'm going to show you my new Zane setup to go along with this. Now, what this build is, this is an extra projectile terror build, and it is amazing if you do this little exploit with it. Now, you don't even need to use terror. Once you have the exploit going, you can use different stuff, which I'll talk about, but for the most part, I'm just going to stick with the terror just because I like it. Now, I want to quickly talk about the skills I have. The first thing I should mention about Zane, though, is that they did actually buff Zane, which was really nice. Zane definitely needed a buff, and I really like what they have done with him. I still think there's some things they could do with him. I personally feel like it would make him a lot better, but we'll see what they do. As of right now, though, Zane is a lot better. There's no doubt about it. Now, one thing about the barrier itself is that now this can actually block a lot of AoE attacks, and because of that, you are almost invincible when you have your barrier up. The only thing that's really going to damage you a lot is when you run over barrels, if you run over things on the ground like fire, and that sets you on fire, any type of elemental. That's what normally will damage you when you have the barrier. But outside of that, you're kind of good if you have the barrier up. Now with this setup, we are using Calm Cool Collective. This is an amazing perk. If we freeze an enemy while we have full health and shields, we reset our action skills, our cooldowns, and our duration. This is amazing. Now, the other perk I just want to quickly talk about, because everything else here you can just kind of look at, just kind of figure it out or write it down. It's fine. Screen cap it. I don't know. Do what you want. But refreshment is something I notice a lot of people don't go for. This is really good health regeneration. 1 point into this is 8% lifesteal against enemies that are frozen. This is so good because with Calm Cool Collective, we need to have our shields up, but we also need to have our health up to get this to work right. So when you have refreshment, that's just going to guarantee that if you are taking any damage, you're able to get back your health like super quickly, no problem. And Brain Freeze is amazing just because you're going to be able to freeze anything. Even if you're not using a cryo weapon, you can still freeze enemies. So this is great. Now, augmentations, you want to go for the gun damage, and you 100% want to go for the all-rounder. This is going to protect us from all sides. This is awesome. Now, I want to talk about the Sentinel tree, and I'm sure that this might surprise the hell out of people because I do not put a lot of points into the Sentinel tree. The main perks I'm going for here is Violent Speed and also violent momentum. And then finally, death follows close. This is going to affect our kill skills, which is important, the duration, the bonus. And they did make it so that now with violent speed, it can stack twice. So that's like 50% movement speed, which is insane. Also, I wish I can get violence, but I can't get this. If you can get this, this can stack twice now too, and it's a lot of fire rate. It is super good. But, like I said, I can't get it. I don't have enough points because we are putting points into the clone tree. Now, this might surprise a couple people because the clone has been pretty bad for a while. Now, for the longest time, a lot of people would always go for this because it's 40% gun damage if you have both your abilities up, and that's great. They also did change Donnie Bork, where now this can stack twice, so it's pretty much 40% gun damage and 6.2% health regeneration, so this is great too. And because we're using the clone, I do have the frags on so that it could throw grenades. And then finally, I'm using borrowed time. This will definitely help you maintain your barrier. That's the important part. We want to keep our barrier up. It makes us pretty much invincible. So this will definitely help you be able to maintain it because the duration is nice. Right now it's 24% times 2, so that's 48. That is really, really good. Now the reason why we put so many points into this tree is because we need to get these final augmentations. The main one is the Doppler Banger. This is going to allow us to blow up the clone, which I'm going to talk about when I talk about the gear and the setup. But this is so important. We need to be able to blow up our clone because we're going to constantly be resetting the duration of the clone and we're refreshing the ability really quickly. So if we're able to blow it up, we're going to be able to apply terror to ourselves pretty easily. And also, you can take advantage of any action skill in perk. Any anointed perk that has that, you can take advantage of it if you can blow up your clone and then reset it with your calm, cool, and collective. And then the final one I have here is just the shared health. I like this. It definitely helps me stay alive because whenever I do lose my shield, taking damage, this can definitely save my life. Now, let's talk about the gear. The first thing I want to mention is the grenade. Now, on your grenade, if you're going for terror, you do want to have on action skill and apply terror to yourself for 18 seconds. This is why we are blowing up the clone so that we can apply terror. We're constantly resetting our durations, and on top of that, we are able to get our cooldowns back instantly. So this is good. The big problem, of course, is that if you don't have this, then there could be a very long stretch where you're not going to have terror, and that's not good. So we don't want that. Now, I do want to say that you can apply terror to yourself with the face puncher. That is an option. Now, here's the deal. A lot of people might not have a face puncher that has melee attacks have a 25% chance to apply terror. A lot of people don't have this. And on top of it, I just find it incredibly annoying to constantly have to switch to the face puncher to apply terror to myself. I don't really like that. I much prefer having terror for 18 seconds after my action skill ends. It just is way more consistent for me. I much prefer this system. Now for the shield, on Zane, you 100% want to use a low capacity, a really good delay, and a really nice recharge rate shield. If you have a shield like that, it's going to be much better than a high capacity shield in any way. Because anytime our shield goes down, you wait a couple seconds, boom, it's like right back up really quickly. We have the ability to heal ourselves if our health is down. That's not a problem. And when we have full shields, full health, we have our calm, cool, and collective going. So this is amazing. The Big Boom Blaster is awesome. They changed the way that boosters work. Now you automatically pick them up. This is amazing because if you pick it up, you're going to get 60% of your shields back. That is awesome. Now I have another one of these. I actually have two of these. And the other one I have here is actually, it has a higher capacity. It has better stats in my opinion. But the thing is that I don't like the higher capacity. I just don't. I much prefer the lower capacity just because it comes back quicker. And for the most part, I'm pretty much invincible if I actually have my barrier up. So I don't have to worry about that. Now for the weapons, I'm using a Lucian's Call with extra projectile. This is pretty much probably the best cryo weapon you can use on Zane with a setup like this, because when we're firing the extra projectiles, we're going to be freezing things really quickly. We can freeze entire mobs with this. It's really, really nice. The other weapon I have here is a Super Shredifier with the extra projectile. It's a fire weapon. This is really meant to help you take out certain flesh targets, like anointed enemies. They did change it so that now you can damage anointed enemies with cryo. So this is now viable. But at the end of the day, I still kind of prefer using fire against anointed enemies just because it will take them out a lot quicker that way. I also do have a Lucian's Call that has extra projectile that's fire. I'm trying to find it. There it is. I do have this, and I do like using it, but the Super Shred, just DPS-wise, it's pretty insane. Also, with the Super Shred, you can freeze enemies so quickly with this, just because it's putting out so many bullets so fast that you can easily freeze enemies. Another thing I kind of didn't mention is the ammo regeneration perk. When you do have this going, if you have that terror and you have a higher magazine, that's the important bit. Super Shred has a really high magazine. The Lucian's Call has a high magazine. So if you have a high magazine, you have infinite ammo. Your ammo is going to regen faster than you can fire it. And that is insane. Now with Lucian's Call, it's absolutely not a problem because when you're getting those headshots, you're returning bullets to your mag on top of it. So it is amazing in that way. Now for the mod, I am using an Executioner. I still think that this is probably the best mod for Zane. Although there is a new mod that came out. It's kind of meant for cryo in a way. It's all about if you slide, you do more damage. And if you're slowed, you do more damage. So that's pretty nice. But overall, I still think the Executioner is probably better just because of all the stuff that you get off of it. And on top of it, this one just has really good stats. It has weapon damage, has assault rifle damage, it has heavy weapon damage. Not that that matters, but it has these things. So I definitely like this mod a lot. And then finally, if you're using the ice build, you want to use the Icebreaker relic. This is Victory Rush. It has magazine, it has area of effect damage, and cryo efficiency. Now, when it comes to your ammo regenerating, you do want to have some type of magazine bonus if possible. If I'm using this setup and I don't have any magazine bonus, I will not actually be able to regen my ammo fast enough so that I have infinite ammo. If I have that little bit bigger magazine, I can have the infinite ammo. But if I don't use this, then what will end up happening is that I will actually start to go through my ammo because my guns are firing faster than my ammo is regenning. Now, let's go ahead and talk about how can you do this exploit. Now, what we're going to be doing here is that we're going to be firing extra projectiles than we normally would. Now, the thing is that once you get this exploit going, you can actually take the terror stuff off. And if you want to at that point, what you could do is you could throw on some of these 50% ones. So these can give you 50% bonus damage for like shock. I have a grenade here as well that could give me like 50% bonus damage to cryo. You know, these are really powerful. So once you have the exploit going, you don't even need to use terror. Now, I'm going to continue to use terror because I don't see the point of actually switching it. But like I said, this works on pretty much everybody. So like on Flak, if you're using Rack Attack, or on Amara with Phase Grass, those abilities are really powerful because you can constantly have them going. On Zane, it's kind of annoying, and on like Moze, it's annoying. And if you are using like Gamma Burst, you don't really want to use that. Same with if you're using Fade Away. You could use it, but it's not really that effective compared to like Rack Attack on Flak, or on Amara if you are using Phase Grass, or really any of her abilities. So those are way, way better on those two. But what you want to do is you want to have two weapons equipped that has extra projectile while you have terror. Now the first step here is we got to get terrored, and we also have to empty our mag. But another thing is we want to remove our shield at this point. Okay, so just remove your shield. If it has ammo regen, remove it because we do not want to actually be regenerating ammo. So now I'm going to go ahead and get terror on myself, but also I'm going to start to unload my magazine. So I'm going to fully unload the magazine, and then what I want to do here is I want to reload the gun, swap the gun. Once I see the ammo count of the gun pop up of the other gun, so on the Lucians, once I see that it pops up with 83 down there, and I can fire the gun to kind of speed that up a little bit, but once I see that, I should be good. Now, you might want to do this for a little while. You don't have to overdo it. You don't really want to overdo it. You can kind of like just go way overboard with this. So I don't recommend doing that, but you want to just go ahead and do this. And you're going to notice that already you can see that my gun is firing a lot of projectiles. And even if I don't have the terror effect going, that is something about this. Even if I don't have the terror effect going, I'm still going to be firing extra projectiles. So it is crazy. Now you want to do this both ways. So if you're using the two different guns, let's say you have, for example, like this Lucian's Call and this Super Shred, I'm going to also do this to the Super Shred. I want the Super Shred to also fire extra projectiles as well. So I'm just going to just kind of reverse it. So at some point here, I'm going to empty out this. So there you go. I emptied out the Lucian's Call. Let me reload this. Now I'm just going to just kind of switch it up here. And I'm going to do this for a while until eventually I feel like I'm firing more than enough projectiles that no matter what I go and do on Mayhem 4, it's going to be a cakewalk. And you're going to see it because I'm going to go to Slaughter Shaft with this, and it's going to be insane. Well, okay, I kind of lucked out there. I got 20% cryo damage as my buff. But, here's something about Mayhem 4. The thing I love about it is the fact that you don't really have to worry about the buffs and debuffs. It's not going to completely nerf your weapon. And I like that. I like that a lot. So I think that they might want to consider just rethinking Mayhem mode in general. I feel like every Mayhem mode, every level of it should kind of work the same way. Where if you're on a lower Mayhem mode, maybe the buffs are stronger for you. And also the enemy buffs are not as strong on those modes. I don't know. Plus, of course, the health and the shields are going to be a little bit less on those modes. But it is such a leap from Mayhem 3, where it's like 250% health, and I think it's like 300% shields and armor for the enemy, to literally going up to 1,000% shields and armor and 850% health. Because if this is the case, I can only imagine if they come out with Mayhem 5, like how much more we're talking about here. So I do feel like, in a way, they may need to go ahead and tone that down a little bit in the future. Maybe they're only doing it right now because they thought, we're going to come out with it and just kind of test the waters. But I do feel like that's kind of ridiculous because it is going to kind of kill a lot of different weapons where they're just not going to be viable at all anymore on this mode. All right, so I'm going to apply terror to myself by blowing up my clone. That's all I have to do. Now with this gun, I'm just going to literally hip fire it the entire time. That's kind of what I do. I have a bad scope on this, and, that's not good at all. But this will create light shows for me, Like, literally, because of all the projectiles coming out of this thing, I'm going to have a ridiculous amount of bullets coming off of enemies if I crit them. And it's not really difficult, especially when I'm hip firing it. If I aim down sights, look at this scope. It's like, scope is bad. But also with Zane, we do get extra damage if we're moving around and stuff, so, that's good. That's one of the reasons why we want to actually be hip firing the entire time. Now, if they kill my clone at any point, that's good. I want them to kill the clone. I want to just keep reapplying terror to myself. So I have no problem with them doing that. And it's very, very easy for me to get the clone back. All I have to do is actually just freeze an enemy, and then I'll reset my durations, and I will easily get my clone back. So there you go. I just blew it up again, and as I'm blowing it up, I just hold the button for that, and as I'm doing that, what's really nice is I can still hip fire, so that is something as well. Now, one thing I talked about is actually having that extra duration. That's actually really nice, because that's going to give me a little bit of a grace period for my barrier. The important thing is the barrier here. That's what we want to maintain. That's what's keeping us alive. That's what's keeping us not really taking any damage here. And that's really, in my opinion, probably the best part about Zane outside of just freezing enemies. Because when enemies are frozen, if you don't know, they take 250% more melee damage. They take 250% more explosion damage. But the big one is they take 250% more headshot damage, crit damage. And that's what makes it so that when we were getting crits with cryo, it is extremely overpowered. And if I want to, I can use my super shred as well. And with the super shred, I can absolutely freeze targets, no problem. That's not an issue, because if I get headshots with brain freeze, that's going to freeze the target pretty much after like 5 headshots. And with something like this, I mean, look at that, like one trigger pull, the guy was frozen just because of all the projectiles coming out of that super shred. It's outrageous. But yeah, for the most part, I kind of just use dilutions. That's my main go-to weapon, unless I want to bust out the super shred for other reasons. And with cryo works really well against armor. It works great against flesh. Not so good against shields, so that's kind of a problem in general, especially if you are playing on Mayhem 4 completely legit. Then it is an issue, I will be honest. Sometimes, like, even if you're using like a Sentinel build where you have like the bonus cryo damage with a cryo weapon, you can come across some shields that just will not go down easily. It's quite frustrating. But that's going to pretty much do it for this build. I wanted to show it off because, first of all, this is a Zane Terror build if you were interested in how to set this up. And it's really, really good. I really like it a lot. But also, I wanted to show off the extra projectile exploit that you can do right now. You can do it on everybody. And it is right now on Mayhem 4. If you're trying to farm Mayhem 4, it's pretty easy to do. And once you do it, you can absolutely destroy everything in this mode. It makes it like incredibly easy, and it will help you farm for better gear. Another thing I want to mention, because I've been saying this in most of my videos now, is that if you are on the PlayStation, if you are interested in having me help hook you up with some of this gear, I am more than cool with doing that. So if you're interested in some of this Zane stuff, just let me know. Send me a message on PlayStation Network. My PSN is Jumpin' Production. It's just like my YouTube name, but there's no S. No spaces, nothing like that. Jumpin' Production. Just like the YouTube name, no S. Send me a message, though. I would appreciate that to let me know that you're interested in the Zane gear. And I'm more than happy to dupe it to anyone who messaged me. A lot of people can attest to this. I've been hit up a whole bunch for the flat gear, Amara gear, and if you hit me up, I will more than likely hook you up. So, now that I've said all that, I would really appreciate it if you could like this video for me. Be sure to subscribe for future Borderlands 3 videos, and make sure to click the bell. If you don't click the bell, you can't stay notified, so I would appreciate it if you would click that bell. That will definitely help me out. But that's going to do it for me, so I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.